Welcome to this video on autoethnography. If that word is strange to you, then this video might not be for you because I'm making this for folk who have a particular interest in doing some academic research on autoethnography. If that's you, then this video hopefully will be a really nice overview of autoethnography and really put a number of things from the literature into place. But of course, you still need to read that literature. Now, if you are not playing in autoethnography, well, at least it'll give you an insight into something of this particular and, in my opinion, incredibly exciting and relevant research methodology. So autoethnography stands kind of like a bridge between what we would think of as your biography, your autobiography, and the world in which you lived in, or the world in which you grew up or live in. So it's a beautiful relationship between the lived experience and the environment within which you live it. And it's very much a conversation. Now, of course, as researcher, you can decide where you want to put your emphasis. For me, in my own autoethnography, it was my relationship to the ideas that were dominant in my environment, and those were mainly scientific or religious ideas. So it was very much a wrestle of those ideas and how they impacted on my life and on the life of my friends and so on. So it's a relationship between the self and the society, the ethnographic world in which it takes place. Like the picture faded in the background there, it's my wife and I on a hike. You know, we go into nature or whatever your thing is, you go into that environment because it feeds you. Well, some environments don't, so many autoethnographies focus on the elements that don't feed us. Pain and struggle and wrestle in some form to try and make sense for ourselves of the world. And that's possibly you if this is your line of research or proposed line of research. So some practices that you need to be aware of if you're going to do an autoethnography is reflexivity, which is basically a self-reflective practice where you examine and explore yourself, your own responses to environments, your own tendencies and so on. Very important that you do this in as objective is probably not the right word, but as kind of balanced way as possible to try and step out of the overly subjective relationship that we normally have to the world. And then another thing to help to add academic rigor to your study is what's called verisimilitude, which is basically some kind of outer verification that what you are writing in your autoethnography, because you're going to be putting down stories or events, and so you'll be reflecting on those from your personal perspective, but you're also going to need some kind of documentation or verification from outside. That can come from the literature, that can come from people who know you. In my own autoethnography, family and friends from when I was a kid and throughout my life, my wife and kids even, commenting on some of the things that I've put in there, just to give some kind of outer perspective to verify. It doesn't prove anything. It just gives a sense of validity to what it is that you've got. So these are the two main practices that are used to try and create some kind of academic rigor to your autoethnography. Now, in the next, when I put the next bit of the animation in, myself and my wife will disappear, but the human being will come back in some abstract form in a moment. So there are three particularly dominant kinds, kind of academically recognized kinds of autoethnographies. Let's start at the top with analytical. So in an analytical autoethnography, well, almost every autoethnography will have some analytical elements to it, where you're going to try and find certain universal things that will emerge, stuff that isn't just because of you and your life and your circumstances, perhaps, but maybe more general about those circumstances or more general about human life that you're going to try and draw out as themes from your study. And that would then be, and if it's particularly the focus of your study, you would have an analytical autoethnography. Many autoethnographies are more evocative. They're really sharing your lived experience in a way, and here really good writing helps if you're a good writer. then you'll capture the essence of your experience, and the reader, who basically creates the story, that's a big part of autoethnography. The reader writes the story, some people say. And so if you write evocatively and well, then the reader will be able to get right into your lived experience, into the world, into the environment that you are trying to portray. And so you enrich human experience for others. And then predominantly you would call yours an evocative, a personal and evocative autoethnography. Now, there was some debate at some point in the history of autoethnography between these two. One particular researcher, Anderson, was doing work on that and got highly criticized because it seemed like from what he was writing that he was criticizing evocative autoethnographies, and the evocative people got upset, and there was a bit of a debate around there. Either way, it set up a kind of a sense of a polarity. And so that's how I developed this concept map, is the autobiography and the ethnography I took as being sort of one scale, analytical and evocative on the other scale. And then holistic thinking kind of began to emerge, because there's a third kind, well, there are actually many kinds of autoethnographies, but these are the three kind of main abstract conceptualizings of it. And that's called critical. And that is very much to look at specific scenarios, specific situations, and to really look at the injustices often that are perpetuated in certain environments, and to try and motivate for some kind of change, some kind of transformation. So this is often when people have had very difficult or painful times. They write about them and they critique from often a kind of more, let's say, a political perspective or political approach, politicizing to show some of the dynamics of whatever that situation contains, and then to try and find ways to transform those. So critical is very much kind of in the do, in the action. And holistic thinking brought me to put them together because I'm a Waldorf teacher as well. And Steiner, the founder of Waldorf Education, talks very particularly about thinking and feeling and willing or doing. And it made a real sense to me that actually what was happening intuitively with researchers is that those who were focusing on analytical autoethnography were really kind of lifting things up into this well-poised and kind of liberated head that we've got to draw out these beautiful universalities. The others were the evocative, very much in the embodied experience, the lived experience, feels personal, feels real. It's very much in the body and very beautiful as a result of that. And then, of course, in the limbs, the doing to really change the world, get active. And so this is the kind of overall picture that I came up with when I was doing my own autoethnography. I call it the concept map, a concept map, because it summarizes these main ideas. Now, obviously, if you're going to do an autoethnography, you're going to need to do a lot of reading. And you'll probably know many of the names, Denzin, Ellis, and golly, I could carry on. There are an enormous number of writers who've contributed enormously to this very exciting research field. But I hope that this diagram gives you a sense of some of the context, or one way, my way, of contextualizing this entire research field. And I used this particular concept map in my own research when I finished my whole story, my whole data. Part of my data analysis was to check and explore how I used each section of this concept map. In other words, to what degree did I do reflexivity or focus on my own autobiography? Where and when and how did I draw on verisimilitude or focus on the elements of my ethnographic world? Where was I more analytical, where more evocative and critical, and so on? So I analyzed my story to give it a holistic basis using this concept map. So if you are planning an autoethnography, I hope this helps. There is, as I say, still a lot to explore in autoethnography, especially when you dive in. The context is lost. You can think of this really not even like a skeleton, but it's kind of like a scaffold that sits outside. And once you're doing your autoethnography, you're going to just lose this picture completely. The scaffolding will go away. You'll dive into your story, and in my case anyway, step out at the end and see, okay, well, how much of that scaffolding did I use, and when and where and how did I use it? And I found it very useful in that process. So good luck. Enjoy your autoethnography. It is life-changing, and it is world-changing as well. So all the best with that. And if you're not doing an autoethnography, well, at least now you have a sense of this very exciting research field. And just to end, if you look at that picture in the middle there, the thinking and the feeling and the limbs, there you see once again, I hope, the human being that picture eliminated, of myself and my wife in the background. There you've got a bit of a picture of it in an abstract form as a scaffold. So thanks very much, and all the best.